All right. I don't want to keep repeating myself about these types of topics. So, and I understand I got like an influx of new subscribers. So, recently LeBron James reiterated on the quote that he put out there a couple months ago about chasing Michael Jordan's ghost. I don't know what it is right now. I guess he's feeling pretty good about himself because his team came back in the finals from a 3-1 deficit and beat the perceived greatest team of all time in certain people's eyes, the 7-3-9 Golden State Warriors. Whatever. But he was talking to a reporter named Tom Withers of the Associated Press, and he mentioned how, quote, it's a personal goal. I just never brought it up, except for on this time, of course. It's my own personal goal to be able to be greater than great. I think that should be everybody's personal goal. He went on to say, if you work for any company or you work for any designer or anywhere, you're like, oh, I aspire to be that guy because he's done it right. He's the greatest, and that's who you look at. So that's always been my personal goal, to use the motivation he gave me as a kid, and I'll use it as motivation now, as well as that I want to get to where he is. That's never changed. People kind of wanted to turn into a conversation, but that's my personal goal, and that's where I land at. Now, I've never been particularly vitriolic toward people who made these comparisons in the past, as long as this is respectful and a responsible comparison. I never like when fanboys just make these stupid, comparisons. I also don't like when people make these stupid one-on-one size comparisons. LeBron James is 6'8" and 270, and Jordan was only, they kind of exaggerate. Jordan was only 6'5" and 180. Which is not quite accurate, but Jordan was listed as 6'6", but he's really 6'4" and 3/4. I suspect LeBron James is 6'7" barefoot. But anyway, and Jordan played right around early part of his career. He was about 190, 195, and before his retirement, he was about 200. And when he came out of retirement, he was about 215. But he was a very strong guy, extraordinarily strong. You can talk to Robert Ory about that one, about how strong Michael Jordan had gotten toward the latter part of his career. But anyway, you got to be when you became a post player like he had became toward the latter part of his career. But like I said, I never really got particularly upset when people make these comparisons, except for when they make the offhanded, stupid comparisons and the size comparisons. Of course, Michael Jordan be able to guard LeBron James 1-on-1, but at the same token, Isaiah Thomas wouldn't be able to guard Manute Bol 1-on-1. But that doesn't mean that Manute Bol is better than Isaiah Thomas. It's stupid. I did get irritated at the Kobe Bryant comparison because I knew those were not legitimate. As great as Kobe Bryant is, I never see him as anything but at best, a borderline top 10 player. I personally have him in a top 15. But, LeBron James is one of those guys who actually can warrant top 3 all-time status. And I also think that with LeBron, he's one of those players who can one day, he's the only guy, I think, out there right now who can challenge Michael, possibly. I did a video about a month ago, maybe, saying, it might have been a little bit more than a month ago now, but I was saying that I think that LeBron could one day be perceived totally different than he is now. For instance, back in the 60s, at the time of Sugar Ray Robinson's retirement in 1965-66, virtually every boxing expert would have told you Sugar Ray Robinson was the guy. He was the greatest of all time. Fast forward about 15 years later after Muhammad Ali's retirement, majority would still say Sugar Ray Robinson, but a little bit more might say Muhammad Ali. Just because of what he meant to them, and he was fresh in their minds, living in the moment. When Sugar Ray Robinson died in April of '89, maybe more people were still saying that, but it was starting, the tide was turning a little bit. Fast forward to Muhammad Ali's death this June, probably a majority of people would say it's Muhammad Ali and not Sugar Ray Robinson. Although those who are boxing fans would say that it was Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, you could make the arguments because boxing has declined as a sport. More people are more casuals. More people aren't as in tune to the history of boxing, yada, yada, yada. But I think that's also true of all sports. I don't think people are the historians that they once were. And I think that, if anything, it's going to get worse as time goes on, which is ironic considering that we have more information at our access more than any other time with the invention of the proliferation of the internet. But it's conceivable that when all of us are gone, LeBron James may be perceived differently than he is now. It'll be a tall order. Perhaps LeBron James could win 4 or 5 more championships, 3 or 4 more MVPs, but he'll have to do it in a time period where his skills will be slowly diminishing. So this leads to this argument. Right now, is LeBron James better than Michael Jordan? And I'll tell you what my answer to that is with 2 words. Hell no. All right. Now, I spoke intelligently for about, gave a objective answer for about, 5 minutes? No, about 7 minutes. Now I'm going to give you reality. LeBron James is 3-4 in the finals, okay? When all of us said back in 2011 that his performance against the Mavericks was all-time horrible and that would be a stain on his legacy, it is a stain on his legacy. And it would take a lot to rid people of that stench, which was his performance, that abomination in the finals. As bad as people are ripping Stephen Curry's performance, Stephen Curry had a Hall of Fame caliber performance in the finals compared to what LeBron James did. All right? So all the people who are ripping Stephen Curry for so-called stinking up in the finals, and I'm one of them, and I suspect a lot of them are LeBron James fanboys, you can't get all defensive when people bring that up. And my goodness, really, LeBron had no reason to have a performance like that because who was checking him? Deshaun Stevenson? Jason Terry? He can't overpower these guys? He choked. Now, that's the one series where I really can't have any excuse for him. In 2007, the Cleveland Cavaliers really had no business being in the finals. They were young. They were going against a prime Spurs team. I give LeBron James a pass for that performance. The fact they got the finals was in itself a remarkable achievement. Okay, but 2011, no. Not the fact that they lost. It's how they lost and his performance. Scoring more than 9 points lower than his seasonal average. Then, people talk about the 3-4. Really, he should probably be 2-5 if Ray Allen didn't hit the biggest shot of his career to send that game into overtime. What was it, game 6? Game 5, I think it was. I can't remember which game it was. I think it was game 5, I think. which extend that series, and they ultimately were able to win against the Spurs in 2014. But no, I mean, there's too many holes with LeBron as far as him coming up short in big moments. They're there. Now, did Michael Jordan ever choke? I can't think of him ever choking on the big stage. Never. I can't think of it. And people like to make the argument about Michael Jordan had a better team, which really to me is stupid. LeBron James played with a bunch of bums. Jordan played with Hall of Famers. Okay, now let me say this. Scottie Pippen was a Hall of Famer. But 2 of those years, the 90-91 championship season and 97-98 season, Scottie Pippen wasn't a Hall of Famer those years. He wasn't an All-Star those years. So 2 of those championship years, Jordan was the only Hall of Famer. Jordan was the only All-Star on the team. Now, Dennis Rodman is a special case. Dennis Rodman to me is one of those few, and I said this in a video years ago, Dennis Rodman is one of those few sort of one-dimensional players who's so great at one or two dimensions that he's great at, historically great, plus with the resume, the 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, the 5 championships, the 7 rebounding titles, the tremendous defense. It's enough to push him into the Hall of Fame. But he was still one-dimensional. So, with this great championship team that everybody keeps talking about, you have Scottie Pippen, who was only an All-Star for 4 of those championship runs, and you have Dennis Rodman, who I said is a one-dimensional Hall of Famer, borderline Hall of Famer. And by the way, is it me or there's some people in the new 2K, has Dennis Rodman's rating been amped up a little bit? I always thought he was between an 82 and an 86 overall. But anyway, I don't know. Talking about video games. But that's it. You look at the players who Michael Jordan played with over the years, and these are not noteworthy people. Ed Neely, Dave Corazine, Will Perdue, Judd Bushler, Dickie Simpkins, Randy Brown, Cliff Levingston, Bill Winnington. None of these guys are going into the Hall of Fame. None of these guys were named to all-star teams. None of these guys were recognized on any all-NBA or all-defensive teams. None of that. None of that. Ron Harper was a solid player and an all-star caliber player in his prime, but by the time he was with the Chicago Bulls, he was not that guy anymore. He was not a reliable scorer anymore. He was not that slashing guy. LeBron James has played with all-stars. He's played with a top 4 shooting guard of all time with Dwayne Wade. I mean, who's ahead of him? Jordan, Kobe, Jerry West. That's about it. I think he supplanted Clyde Drexler. He's pretty much past Clyde, I think. So he's the 4th greatest shooting guard of all time. The 4th greatest shooting guard of all time was on his team. And they still managed to fucking lose 2 of those finals in Miami. Chris Bosh, at one point in time was a 24-10 guy. 24-10. Dennis Rodman couldn't score like that. Now, granted, Dennis Rodman was a far better rebounder than Bosh. But all around, come on. And now he's playing with Kyrie Irving, a sensational point guard who, at some points in the finals, I was looking at him like, oh my goodness. He looked like Isaiah Thomas out there. He was getting double teamed and he was scoring, with bank shots. I mean, he looked phenomenal. Who did we have at point guard? Who was our best point guard doing those runs? John fucking Paxson and PJ Armstrong? Are you fucking kidding me? But people like to say that LeBron James played with a bunch of fucking bums. And even in those teams where They failed. Mo Williams was still fucking better than John Paxson and B.J. Armstrong, in my opinion. He was matter of fact, he was better. He was a borderline at his peak. Mo Williams, who put up 52 points in the game, mind you, in his career. In his prime, he was a borderline all-star player. All-star caliber player. All right? LeBron James played with some talent when he was with Cleveland the first time around. They just could never get past the Boston Celtics. Just as the Bulls couldn't get past the Detroit Pistons. So this revisionist history shit has to stop. All right? Stop making it look like Michael Jordan played with Boston Celtics, Bill Russell era, teams with all these Hall of Famers. That's bullshit. Brandon Jennings. All right? Both of these guys are great. Both of these guys will be first ballot Hall of Famers. They're multiple-time MVPs. But let's be fair. Jordan is the greater player. And you can also make the argument Jordan did what he did while having a somewhat fractionary career. He missed a season and a third of his prime, the 93-94 season, that entire season, due to retirement, and most 94-95 season to retirement. Then I still believe that Bulls team would have won the championship in 98-99 had they stayed together. That they wouldn't have won in 99-2000. They would have beaten that Lakers team. They would have been too degraded and too old. And the Lakers team would just been too talented at that time. But I still think the Bulls got cheated out of at least one title in the 90s. At least one. I think they would have beaten the Houston Rockets team in 94 because I'm just being a biased Bulls fan. If that Knicks team struggled with that Bulls team that went 55-27, and I'll explain in the video why that team went 55-27. It wasn't because Michael Jordan's overrated. It's because Phil Jackson and the supporting cast of coaches did a phenomenal job of working with what they had, and Scottie Pippen was just entering his prime as an NBA basketball player. And there's other things as far as with that. But the fact that the Knicks team won 7 games with that Bulls team lets me know that if Michael Jordan was there, they would have lost to the Chicago Bulls. And if the Houston Rockets struggled with that Knicks team, even though Ewing and John Starks shot well under 40% collectively, I think 37 and 36% collectively, and they still won 7 games, there's no doubt in my mind that the Bulls would have won at least 2 more titles if Michael Jordan never retired. He said he needed that break, but theoretically, if he never needed that break, if he played his entire career and, instead of playing 15 seasons, he played 19 seasons, I think that he would have won at least 8 championships instead of 6. So really, we're comparing a guy who had a somewhat incomplete, a slightly fractionary career, missing pieces here or there. All right? This is a guy who, if he never retired, would have, like I said, would at least won 8 championships. I think that he would have won at least one more MVP award. At least one more. So we'd have had 6 equaling Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And he'd be well over 40,000 points, obliterating Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record. So, in conclusion, right now, is LeBron James better than Michael Jordan? No. Too many times, like I've said, he's ultimately come up short on the biggest stage, constantly needing a pep talk. I remember, sometime in the finals, I think it was after Game 6, he said something like, well, after we went down 3-1, I had to review tape and I realized I wasn't approaching the game correct. I had a different. Michael Jordan never had to do all that shit. Okay, he recognized whether or not tonight. All right, I can see with this team. I'm gonna facilitate a little bit more. I'm gonna get Luke Longley involved early. Okay, I'm gonna let Scottie do his thing. Or he was like, you know what? Fuck this. Everybody's fucking missing shots. I gotta fucking take over. He didn't have to figure things out. 98 Game 6, no matter how fatigued his 35-year-old body was, playing 21 playoff games, going through a grueling season with the Bulls just totally like, injured and depleted, he recognized he had to score. He had to shoot the basketball that night. He had to be the man, no matter how fatigued he was. So many of his shots that night, if you look at that game, so many of his shots were short because of fatigue. If Michael Jordan had been in his prime that night when he scored 45 points on 15 or 35 shooting, he would have scored at least 60 points. But he was so fucking tired. But Michael Jordan never made excuses. And he's the greatest player of all time. And LeBron James still has yet to ascend that throne. He has to do much more than what he's already accomplished, and that's a tall order. So that's my thoughts on that. Tell me what you guys think.